Goldman Sachs just announced it's eliminating thousands of jobs. And it's not traders getting cut, it's the back office workers nobody talks about. Here's what's actually happening, and why it matters way more than the headlines suggest. When you think of Wall Street layoffs, your brain probably goes to trading floors. Guys in suspenders screaming into phones, getting walked out by security. That's the image. But the real story in banking right now is way quieter and way more significant. Goldman, JP Morgan, Bank of America, they're all doing the same thing. They're automating the hell out of the jobs that keep the machine running. Let me break down what's really going on. A bank like Goldman has roughly 40,000 employees. That sounds like a lot, but here's the thing. Maybe 5% of those people are actually traders or investment bankers making big deals. The rest? They're doing the stuff nobody sees. They're processing trades after they happen. They're checking if documents match up. They're moving money between accounts. They're handling compliance, making sure the bank isn't breaking laws. These are the jobs that feel slow and repetitive to a human, which means they're perfect for automation. For decades, banks tolerated this because it was cheaper to hire people than build the software. But that equation flipped. AI and automation got good, really good, and suddenly, a bank can do in 3 months with code what used to take 100 people a year to do. Here's the concrete example. Goldman announced it's cutting about 3,000 jobs, or roughly 7% of its workforce. But the CEO didn't make a big deal about it. He buried it in earnings calls and memos. Why? Because it's not dramatic. It's not a shock. It's a slow, methodical hollowing out of the middle of the bank. Now, you might think this is just Goldman being efficient. Good for them, right? They cut costs, shareholders are happy. But zoom out, and it gets weird. Because this is happening across the entire financial sector simultaneously. JP Morgan's CEO already said AI would replace 50% of the bank's work. 50%. That's not an efficiency gain. That's a fundamental restructuring. Here's where it gets interesting for you. Even if you don't work in finance, banks employ about 2 million people in the US. If we're talking 50% automation across the sector, that's 1 million jobs that look different in 5 to 10 years. Some of those people will move into AI and tech roles. Some will move into client-facing work. But a lot of them won't. They'll just be gone. And that matters because banks are the canary in the coal mine. They're the first industry where you can actually measure automation at scale because everything they do is quantifiable. If a bank can automate compliance checking or trade settlement or account reconciliation, then literally every other industry with similar back-office work is next. That includes insurance companies, accounting firms, legal services, healthcare administration. The jobs that are getting cut at Goldman right now are the template for what's coming everywhere else. So what's driving this acceleration? 3 things. First, the technology got way better. Machine learning can now spot patterns in documents and data that used to require a human reading through hundreds of pages. Second, the financial pressure is intense. If Goldman can cut costs and boost profit margins, their stock goes up. Their competitors see that and panic. They have to do the same thing or fall behind. It becomes this arms race of automation. Third, there's less stigma now. 5 years ago, cutting jobs because of AI felt risky from a PR standpoint. Now, it's just business. But here's what's kind of wild. The banks aren't saying they're cutting jobs because of AI. They're using softer language. They talk about streamlining operations or improving efficiency or right-sizing the organization. It's the same thing. They're just using words that don't scare people as much. The other thing happening is that the jobs that are disappearing aren't necessarily bad jobs. A lot of them are middle-class jobs. Not glamorous, but stable. You could work in the back office at Goldman, make 80 or 90 grand a year, have decent benefits, and build a career. Those jobs are evaporating. The new jobs that are being created, the AI and data science roles, require different skills, different education. They're not a one-to-one replacement. So what does this mean for the future? A few things. 1. If you work in any kind of back office role, anywhere, not just finance, you should be thinking about what automation means for your job. Not in a paranoid way, but realistically. What parts of your job are repetitive and rules-based? Those are the parts that are most vulnerable. The parts that require judgment or human interaction. Those are safer, at least for now. 2. This is going to put pressure on wages for middle-skill jobs. If companies can automate 50% of their work, they don't need to compete as hard for the remaining workers. That's basic supply and demand. The jobs that survive are either high-skilled technical roles or low-wage customer-facing roles. The middle gets squeezed. 3. And this is the big one. This is a policy problem, not a tech problem. Technology doesn't have a conscience. Banks don't have a moral obligation to keep jobs that aren't profitable. But society has an obligation to figure out what happens to the people whose jobs disappear. That's a question about retraining, education, social safety nets. And right now, we're not really having that conversation seriously. We're just watching it happen. What's interesting is that Goldman and other banks probably don't even see this as controversial. From their perspective, they're doing what they're supposed to do, making their business more efficient, delivering value to shareholders. The broader impact on the economy, on communities, on people's lives, that's not their problem. That's someone else's problem. But it becomes everyone's problem eventually. When millions of people lose jobs, they stop spending money. When people stop spending money, businesses slow down. When businesses slow down, you get a different kind of crisis. So the banks are solving their problem in a way that might create a bigger problem for all of us. The reason I'm telling you this is because Goldman's move is a preview of what's coming. This isn't speculation. This is happening right now. And if you want to actually understand what's coming next in AI and tech, not just the hype, but the real economic and social shifts, you need to pay attention to stories like this. So if you want to keep up with what's actually happening in AI and tech, beyond the headlines, subscribe. I break down one of these every few days, and I promise they're way more useful than whatever you're reading on Twitter.